Welcome, everyone, to another adventure into reality. Today, I'm once again joined by my intrepid, mystical, magical co host, Martina Grubmueller.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, guys. Good to be here.
Good to be here, too. Today, we are looking at the ancient future now, how to make it into your life. And for those that are new to the channel, what does ancient future now really mean? Martina, let's dive in with a fair warning to those that are new here. It is not that we're talking advanced or fast. We are talking context here. It's not about how many shows you've listened to in the moment. It's understanding that the flow Martina and I have are to define a subject matter at an eagle eyes point of view. We're not here to give you the layman's perspective because the layman's perspective is earned through your own studying. As the journey of studying into the nature of reality goes, it is the eagle eye that helps you leap forward in different pattern recognitions and have aha moments. So, Martina, let's delve into the ancient future now and what it can mean and begin to define this as context for the greater teaching.
Yeah, and as you said, I'd like to keep it very simple because I've gone through a bit of a exploration into this of late. You know, I've never really looked at that, but now I started looking at my journey, and then I remember you saying that you have had many lifetimes that you actually planned out. You had to plan to be here.
Yes.
And so the ancient future now is something that you have been planning all those lifetimes over the last 54 million years or whatever your span is, right? So it's actually, we all have that. So every single one of us right now, sitting here, being here, is their ancient future now.
To a previous perspective being who's gone on the journey of charting a course into the ancient future. So to be here and doing what I'm doing now, I would have planned roughly 600,000 lives ahead of time. Now, that's not just on this linear time. That's on many lateral, vertical, and horizontal timelines in which I began being part of the soul family of everything that's in this incarnational, reincarnational process. It's what made me uniquely special to be in the Galactic historian role, having been soul family to all the karmic creators and offenders that are intimately, intricately interwoven within where we're at today now. And that journey in planning required many times in the fetus in the womb to act as the galactic fetus in the womb, as well as the universal fetus, to begin charting unique synchronicities through the different layers of the dream weave that was out there.
Exactly. And you know what that actually means, there's so many different concepts I would like to bring up and to just really apply to us on a very personal, individual level. You know, those big concepts like galactic history, what is the timeline, what is, the paths, charts, and avatars. We talked about all of that. But I'd really like to use this time today to create a weave actually and bring it all together. Because just saying that you're the ancient future now, we are all that, means that we are everything. We are the past, we are the present, we are the future at the same time. And now, in this place, now in the present, we are ready planning the next future ancient nows.
And because we're already planning, it is in manifestation. There have been many moments in my personal evolution where a future version of me came back and said, "Hi, Andrew, I'm your future self. What proof do you need?" Well, this is a technique I use on my regular radio shows all the time because that's what I did to myself. And I go, well, if you're me, prove it. And the proof came through heart space discerning love that without a doubt, it was a future me. And
Yes.
gaining that connected, harmonious, respectful back and forth. It is my future, and it isn't here to interfere or compete with me. It's here to help me understand what the ancient future now can do for the Andrew in the now, who is technically the ancient future, waiting for it in acceptance.
So this is adding the future element to that, because we are getting more and more, understanding the ideas of having the ancestral, going back to our ancestors, starting to communicate with them. But it goes the other way around too. So actually getting into the future, bringing our future selves into this whole equation here.
Okay. And then learning my future self could visit me. I need to go visit a past self.
Yes.
And just in like many of the shows, I have people go and visit their 2-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 6-year-old, the person that was just about to be abused or just after an abuse. That is time travel also. And when I allowed my ancient future to connect to me, and I took on the awareness of responsibility and the responsibility to my awareness, that I can communicate to past versions of me and say exactly, hello, past version of you, I am your future self. What proof do you need?
Yeah.
And then was able to make a connective tissue of interwoven connection between the past, present, and future, which allows it all to simultaneously exist in a non-competition, non-hierarchical format.
Absolutely. So what comes to mind here is, that one tool that we often talk about is creating treatments into the future, because there is a relation to that. As you're creating, whoever's done a treatment into the future really has the understanding and the cognition when it gets to that time that you start feeling different,
Right.
because it's really actually connecting.
And on my journey, when I learned Reiki 2, sending treatments forward in time to yourself, I took it to the next level. And I've talked about this on the show. And for people that are new to it, you can you can heal the past version of yourself, and you can heal the future version of yourself. So what I charted is 3 days ahead, 5 days ahead, 15 days ahead, 30 days ahead. And that every day between now and 30 days later, I was sending a 20-minute treatment forward in time to myself. Okay. Believe it or not, that's not that amount of hours. It's about 6 hours of work to do.
Yeah.
To do it for 30 hours, to do 30 days ahead of yourself. And then what is my future responsibility? To remember to accept it.
To remember to accept it, and also to acknowledge it. So accept it, that's the precursor for it. And then when it actually happens, because I think that's the most difficult thing, because you actually start integrating it, then you become the energy of it, and then you forget to actually acknowledging it.
Exactly.
And that's important to acknowledge it, because otherwise it's almost like a waste of exercise.
Right. And in Reiki, every time you give a treatment, you receive a treatment. So I'm sending a treatment forward in time, and I'm receiving a treatment. And then the future me is receiving a treatment, and I'm getting another treatment.
Yeah.
So it's not 1, it's 4.
Yes.
Just ponder that. And that's the way the universe works. And it got to the point where my personal journey, I was sending treatments in time 6 to 8 months ahead of time for myself. It's what created my future capacity to see potential timelines out of choice, not out of random sight or semi-synchronistic visions that created a line of vision. I was able to immerse myself into my own timelines of potential. And it's what I was able to do when I see potentials in people's crown chakras. It's because I charted my own course into my future, and I didn't allow anything to course correct me that wasn't me.
Yes. So this is now a good point where I actually want to talk about timelines with regards to all of that. Okay. So we have the 3 timelines. We have the graduation timeline. We've got the above and below, which is slightly different type of looking at it. Now, I understand that we have the graduation timeline now since 2011, right?
Okay, let's just call graduation GMT. And the other ones are east, west, and south, or something to that effect. GMT is the universal time.
That's the universal time that everyone for ascension, let's call it ascension, awakening, and is on that timeline, correct?
But they're on other timelines also at the same time.
Yes. So my first question is, first of all, the timeline itself. Can we look at the timeline from a dimensional perspective as a level of awareness, or is it something?
The Hollow Earth timeline is solid 4th, 5th, and 6th dimension.
Yes.
It's not limited to one, and it can be many at the same time. It can even be seventh and eighth dimension. It all depends on where in this Hollow Earth hologram your energy is residing.
The Hollow Earth timelines, though, they are not on the graduation timeline. They're right. They are there to assist the process, but not
Or de-assist it, or
or
slow it down. But
yes.
there are many Hollow Earth beings who are waiting to leave, and they can't leave until we've had our graduation. So
Correct.
they're interwoven with us. And yes, there are many Hollow Earth beings who will be on the graduation timeline and leave at the same time.
So, okay, so because I understood that everything in Hollow Earth, all the species down there are not on the graduation timeline.
85% are not on the graduation timeline.
Okay. So that leaves now the question of how, in terms of mechanics, I know we're going to just drill down to the nitty gritty here. We're not talking about the wars and everything, but what are the mechanics? How easy is it to jump timelines, to move from, timeline?
How easy it is to breathe.
Okay.
That's how easy it is to switch timelines. Timelines are scent in the wind. You can easily go from one to the other to the other. And there are times there are technologically driven winds that, are like hurricane winds, and they drive you to the edge over there, and you're on that timeline for a while. But we also, like homing pigeons, go back to where the majority of our time roots are, where the right contracts are attracting us like a homing pigeon.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So
and then there are times we fractalize and leave a shard here and a shard there and a shard here and a shard there on many different lines.
So, okay, so let's look at that. So if we are creating our avatar here on the graduation timeline, which means we are inviting as many shards, parts, and shards and parts onto this timeline, correct? To work with us.
So that we are solidifying this timeline so that the winds of change can't blow us onto another timeline.
As we are going through the frequency changes and going into that ascension period, raising our vibrations, what happens to the shards that haven't made it onto this timeline, onto this graduation timeline?
If you're a spiritual person, like a homing beacon, you will be attracted to them through some form of resolution synchronicity, i.e., I'm sad and I don't know why. I'm going to do some personal inner work. Man, there's an inner child inside me I haven't healed. That's the homing pigeon of the self, guiding to what needs to be healed. Or you go to find a healer who helps you reveal the places which you haven't looked, not out of ignorance, but simply not out of that you just haven't looked in that direction.
So having said that, is when we do emotional healing and we're letting go of the emotions that are attached to the events, the dramatic events and everything, that changes the timeline. Does it mean that you're merging as you're healing that? Are you merging timelines? Are you collapsing timelines? Or are you just staying on that graduation timeline and creating different potentials?
So the most simplest way to put it, there are other timelines where the negative system will collapse a timeline, and then your shard will get caught into a negative realm. It'll be absorbed into a dream realm that doesn't have time to it, even though that shard thinks it has times. Those are called hell. Often do that. They come in with the winds of change, blow really hard, and you leave a bunch of shards on a bunch of different timelines, and then they purposely collapse those so they could harvest those shards. That's the negative dream realms, etc. Now, when we recover those negative dream worlds, we're taking that shard out of that hell realm and integrating it back into this timeline, back into the DNA structure, so it's no longer schismated or broken. Now, there are other times that we're on timelines where the common winds of change blew us to here or there, and it's not that the self is lost, it's kind of preoccupied with walking with the daisies. And you recover it in a variety of ways through simple accepting it back in. And then you would be collapsing that timeline where, hey, you can't keep going out there walking and looking at the daisies all the time. We need ourselves here on this timeline. Look at the daisies on this timeline.
Yeah. So when we flip this now, coming from a creation perspective, we're creating, let's look at the future, we're creating future potentials. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're creating new timelines with every idea that we create, with every potential that we create, correct?
We can. That's ununiformity of the Great Awakening, because it's an individual awakening. You could create dozens of timelines that have no fork in them. They're equally layered over each other, because we don't need to be in a single body. We're multidimensional, multifunctional photonic beings of light, and we can simultaneously exist without competitions to ourselves. So there can be a situation, even in unawareness, where you could be walking on several timelines on the graduate line. Potential is something your precognitive workforce has to explore, so that it may show something to you. Like, let's say you're a race car driver and you're really famous, and you decide, I don't want to do race car driving anymore, but I'm famous, and what am I going to do? What could you switch into that will still keep you on track of being a spiritually contracted famous person that has the potential to still connect to millions?
Okay, cool. So what you're saying here is you can have several timelines on the graduation timeline.
Right.
So it's not like, get rid of all the timelines and get all onto the graduation timeline, because that was just what
the greater spiritual goal is to have them on this time, on the graduation time. Unfortunately, humans are messy, and they have potentials on many timelines.
Well, I remember you saying something about the ghost timelines in that we are creating in our dream time. It's like the limb syndrome, right? And even when we let go of the timeline and we're integrating, that shadow, that ghost, that limb syndrome is still there, right?
Yep. And that's the trauma of leftover realms that weren't closed down properly.
So there's another thing I've read somewhere, that every dimension has a certain amount of timelines. Is that correct?
No, each dimension can have an infinite amount of timelines. Each person in each dimension can have their own infinite amount of timelines.
Okay.
There's no limitation there.
Okay. So now the difference, is there a mechanical difference in terms of a forced or a natural timeline?
Yes. A timeline change is something that's actually affecting the DNA, how it's stored in light memory, and then how we access it through the skull cap, which is the file tree to the light memories. And those light memories are past, present, and future simultaneously existing. And if that memory is skewed to be perceived in a different way, that is a forced timeline using technology to manipulate the way you perceive the light memory through the DNA instrument of experience, which can be very hard. It's like Patriot programming is a classic example of technological to DNA memories, because you're so into the patriotic cause instead of the individual journey.
So something comes up here for me. I've heard you talk about the virus having human DNA implanted in other species, human genes, because of the virus, being a light body affecting. So how that must have a huge impact on the timelines too.
Yes, because the virus itself is a time-traveling karmic retribution virus. And it's not just imprinting human DNA, it's printing the signature frequency mark in the DNA that attracts this form of karmic resolution. It's like a dog marking a spot, and what's attracted to the spot after the dog marks it.
Yeah.
Okay? And that journey is to understanding that this virus is going to spread via light body DNA.
Yeah, but I thought that's a major thing, actually. The human gene is being implemented into other species, and also that made me think: what about AIs? Artificial.
They can get it too.
They can get it too.
Example: DNA. All the major medicines that we work with are viral DNA insertions. When they take a virus, they put the DNA into it, they give the viral DNA to a human being, and it's added to their DNA. That's all genetics right now. That's the nature of human common genetics now. But with this concept to understand, this virus can have access to 200 strands of DNA availability to generate the exact rung it will need to insert itself into you to frequency match for this time-traveling karmic retribution virus. No
Yes.
matter what you are, as long as you have a light body that exists in a dreaming prismatic frequency.
Because that must have a huge impact on the whole soul code and the commerce, right? The DNA commerce.
Absolutely, yeah. There are metaphorical energetic blockades now because there's a fear that this virus will go to places who believe themselves to be of the highest good, but have been in denial for the longest time of their subtle interference into the time wars. You know, even if it was a fart in the timeline, to them, 1,000 or 1,000,000 years later, it's gigantic.
And again, all of that will obviously impact on the timelines and also on the mechanics of the bifurcation, right?
Correct. And that's ultimately what's driving this virus to make the bifurcation and separation of densities, why it's a time-traveling karmic retribution virus with 200 strands of potential DNA for inserting the resolution contract.
Okay. So having said all that now is let's say once this thing is completed, or at the later stage, this timeline business is going to continue.
It'll change in potentialities for us. We'll be able to learn to have many bodies on many timelines, researching many subjects simultaneously without competing with each other. And then after a while, we'll have a reunion of ourselves. We'll learn what everyone's done. We'll reap the resources, and then we'll make new versions of ourselves or keep existing versions to go out and continuously learn, who are feeding back to the primary I am, the journey of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our birthright and legacy is to be on many timelines simultaneously. Right now, it's just being abused for us.
So with I looked a little bit into the galactic history, into the transcripts, and there was obviously one of those questions was with, you know, all these different parts and charts on these different timelines with the ascension. What is happening? What you're just saying is it's the same going to happen to those negative beings, right? That are split into so many different individuals.
So the answer is some of those negative. Am I going to be a part of the awakening? And most of them already know. They've already had a future version. Ideology and zealotry, they can't see the very short-term goals that lead out of zealotry that don't include a wrecking ball of shame, blame, and guilt on them. And that's why humanity is in a unique position where the traumas it's gone through from source connection to source disconnection to source connection, it will be able to help all sides of that equation back to the journey of their own source connection that doesn't have the wrecking ball of shame, blame, or guilt.
Yeah. And lots of them, you know, will obviously go to the 18th universe, and, you know, all this, the bifurcation process will take a lot of
the ones that are contracted to go to the 18th universe, the vast majority have already gone. What's left is what I said, the ones you have to take power of their cold dead hands. I said that in the galactic history. Now, how do you take the power out of the cold dead hands of something that hasn't had cold dead hands in 1,000,000 years?
Yeah, well, this is where all the walk-ins.
No, we have to force them into manifestation through our individuation growth process, separate of the global narrative and separate of the collective awakening. We each force them into a manifesting point and make them irrelevant to our greater growth, therefore severing their capacity to harvest or manipulate us in any way, shape, or form at the individual level.
Right. This is the forgiveness that's coming in here, isn't it?
Correct. Right.
So we have to learn to forgive.
Right. And each individual has to do it on their own with their own journey. Yeah. Cutting that cord with the forgiving energy to them and thanking them for being the teacher, no matter how assholish they've been. They still were a great teacher.
Yeah.
And there will always be those that can't. Oh, that's fine. That's part of your journey into the awakening.
Right. With regards to the timelines, is there anything else that you want to mention with the ancient future now? Or have we covered quite a bit on that now, I think. These were the
So, ancient future now, it is a common statement I have throughout many of the teachings. And if one wants to begin infix subject matters, this is adding to the total potential of what you can think about in the moment of now. It's expanding your edge of unknowingness to allow knowingness, something from the future, has access to your field now. We are not limited to what we know now. We all know that we're more than we've heard, read, or studied. And that practice in implementing ancient future now is going, well, if I truly am all of my past, present, and future self simultaneously existing, all of my awareness is in my field. And what I have to do is go to my edge of the unknowingness and accept it without fear. And within that field of awareness is my pure knowingness.
Yes. And what actually does that mean? What does pure knowingness actually mean? Because I've started to recognize now, this is actually the pattern recognition that you keep talking about.
Yes. Knowingness is instantaneous pattern recognition, or as I call it, grandmaster of the obvious.
Yeah. And it's a sensitivity, but not from a negative perspective, to the energies. It's almost like reading the energies. What you can work it from that perspective, or you can say, what is the pattern running? What very simple, what is somebody running? What pattern are they running? What is their community running? And stuff like that.
I like to give a little bit more visceral definition than reading. Think of it as somebody that's blind reading Braille.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a far more visceral edge of the unknowingness, and I actually have to engage it so that I'm perceiving it in a reading process, but all the senses are a part of it from the body, because we can't enter it solely in the mind space. We can perceive some of it, but we will miss a tremendous amount of the pattern recognition if we don't include the rest of the body.
Well, it's actually, you call it the DNA instrument of experience. It's called exactly for that reason, because it's that communication with the body, that feedback, right, from back and fro.
Absolutely. And once we get back to self-mastery, which is including everything into the body, we begin to learn that the edge of the unknowingness, we've always been there. We've really always been there. It's a matter of how much fear or how many seeds of doubt we've watered right on that edge.
And also it's a matter of making sense. I like, we all talk about, oh, this doesn't make sense. What does that actually mean? Making sense. It means using all your senses that you are aware of and beyond.
Right. So that a pattern recognition exists. Oftentimes when something doesn't make sense, there's a misfire in the information, or the way you're decoding it has a seed of doubt or a variety of other things that can create the misunderstanding.
Exactly. And now there's also, I think one needs to mention, there's a difference in perceiving everything from everyone, taking it on like the old empathic, version of it, then to the new definition. Doesn't mean that I have to entangle what you can call it, what it is, right?
Right. Car Daniel in the chat room, thank you so much. It's not making sense to your indoctrination.
Yeah.
Oftentimes our indoctrinated programs are what's saying, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay?
Yeah. But, this is interesting because, and this is where past lives come in too, because pattern recognition is obviously what you got from here. And this is where the ancient future self comes back in, because as you start remembering your past lives, so if you've been lucky and had a session with Andrew or with other people who actually can, you start seeing the patterns in your past lives, right? And then there's the situation. I remember having the session with you 2014 where, you were telling me all these funky things, being, I don't know, Neanderthal.
Galactic communicator, Neanderthal. Yes.
What the hell, And I said to you, I remember saying to you, I actually wrote it down here. What am I supposed to be doing with this now? Right? So I love that you tell me, and I'm so glad you did, because now I'm starting to understand what you're actually saying. But I was saying, and you were saying to me, and this is the sentence, yeah? I've written this down. What you were supposed to be doing now is not what you were supposed to be doing then. Now, is a tricky sentence, yes. Yeah? So I was like, what I'm supposed to be doing now is what I'm supposed to be doing then. Yes, and that's big. Let's unplug that. What is that? What did you actually?
That which I'm giving you as context is to not influence you in a direct action of who you are today. It is just there of the many things you've done, just like when you have your resume. I was a banker, I was a this, I worked in the oil industry. You've had many careers, and the career you're applying for this IM lifetime isn't a repeat of that. It's a hybrid of many of them, maybe, or none of them.
That's exactly what I, understood over the years. It wasn't saying, okay, just because you've been a Knights Templar in 1530, yeah, called something different, doesn't mean that you have to be a Knights Templar now. But look at the pattern.
Yes.
Right? Look at the, what does a Knights Templar do? Secret societies. What is that? What is the pattern in that? Why have I been a seeker of mystery schools for so long? What is that? What's behind that? And this
what's that eagle eye perspective in the pattern recognition?
Yeah. Right. And that wasn't saying in one, I have to be amazing in this life. No, fuck that. Absolutely not. Yeah. But there is this interest because it's innately in my lineage, in my DNA. And it came with lots of other things. I remember you asking me, what do you remember about your mom's, grandmother? I could remember nothing, nothing, no interest either. And that was part of that pattern recognition for you saying, well, obviously not, because you've been kicked out of the Masons, right? But all sorts of things, and I'm like, whoa. Which, of course, now leads me to another thing. The secret societies, they're still very much running the show here. How has that changed, actually? That's a question for me, almost personally. I want to know.
The secret societies don't run the show. They're just the apparatus that takes orders.
Okay.
They're the thugs. They're not the leaders. And I will turn the phrase from David Icke. This world is owned by psychopaths and run by idiots.
Yeah.
It's the hollow earth that tells the oligarchs of the surface what to do, and it's the oligarchs of the surface who tell the idiots to implement it.
And yet there is still a huge impact that they're making. I mean, just, taking that coin, the pen that you mentioned in the other show,
right,
where you were saying it's the Knights of Columbus or something, right?
Knights of Columbus and the Knights, a variety of knightly orders that were basically giving him the order from the Black Pope. Yes,
exactly. So they might not be calling the strings, pulling the strings, they're still very much involved in everything.
At that particular level of the American government, yes. But the American government has many secret societies who are dying, again, because it's the oligarchs of the world have set up a chessboard that competes with itself through proxies. So one does not know what the other one is doing, and one doesn't know what the other is doing. And very few have the overview of who's actually running the system. It's the compartmentalization, and they're using the factions and the fractions within fractalized factions to compete against each other to generate a political system that we believe isn't corrupt.
Yeah. So, the other thing is that actually, how is the influence of those secret societies now with the forthcoming drug wars, the drug, you mentioned?
Well, they're the ones that will generate that story. They need a new villain, a temporary villain, until they can get people to believe in some of their older stories, or they're going to have to create a brand new story, a new villain for the news cycles.
Mm. So there's that connection there.
Right. They're trying to set up American militias to be the new villains. And they've done this before, just like they've tried to go take us to war with Iran over and over again. Those stories are so played out, they're not going to get the traction they want. So they need something that can get short-term traction. And that could be a drug lord easily. He's already got a $20 million reward for him. They'll up it to $40 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though, you know, the situation at the moment, you know, renders itself perfectly for anything like that, you know, any cultism, if you want to look at it from that perspective, is easy now to get in with the volatility that's happening with people.
No, I think it's much harder for the cults and secret societies to do anything. Their rituals are highly distorted. They don't have the same amount of new people coming in to join them. They have a clear, obvious brain drain within their own societies, as well as a intricately interwoven ego problem within all of the cults and secret societies. So it's so bad that the amount of yes men in each of the trees of control are far too much. That's why it's run by idiots. That the whole world is run by idiots, owned by psychopaths, run by idiots.
Okay, well, that's actually a good thing then, because I was, you know, thinking about this, you know, coin, and you mentioned, I was thinking, you know, is this I don't know, a revolution, an evolution of that again? So that's actually not the case. And then we've got Hollow Earth as well, isn't it? And they probably would work against that.
Well, they're the ones that are making that field of self competition rich and fertile. They want that. They want the farmers and the farm hands to constantly be striving for everyone else's job or more importance. But the farmers and farm hands' job is harvest. And then the farmers and the farm hands contract out entities to till the fields. Okay. Just like, you know, you have the Mexican labor come across the American border to pick the crops. Entities, negative energy entities, are hired by the farmers and farm hands to pick the fields, which are human beings.
Okay.
And there's an entire society of entities, living and unliving, that are economically interwoven to the systems contracting and hiring them to be harvesters. So the apparatus that's there is a giant farm business. And if you see it as the farm business, and it's the hollow earth, it's the mega corporation that dictates to the farmers and farm hands what you can do and defines the contracts to the farm workers, the actual people that do the harvesting. And they're the ones that sign the paychecks. The farm doesn't sign the paycheck.
So there's just now to sit back and actually see what's happening with the new management down there.
Correct.
What changes will be, you know. Yeah. And in the meantime, getting back to doing your own individual journey of self-mastery, not to entangle with all of that. And of course, there's another side to Hollow Earth too, where you can actually work with the species down there, with the benevolent guardians and guides.
Absolutely. There's benevolent ones that are down there too. Just remember, they're interwoven to the greater political process there. That doesn't make them inherently bad or inherently good. It just makes them inherently entangled with the situation.
Yeah.
Okay? And part of the individuated awakening to the greater truths, which is relevant to you, is to, yeah, a lot of people want to know about this information, but once you know it, now what? If you become paranoid to it, you overlook at it, you've lost your journey into your awakening. It just has to be background contextual data as you're moving forward. Yes, the world is controlled. Yes, there's a way for me to function and navigate through it through my self-mastery.
And as far as I'm concerned, it ignorance is no longer bliss. You have to get informed so that you can make an informed choice, as far as I'm concerned, because there's so much happening in dream time where you are actually interacting with those beings in Hollow Earth. And if you're not knowing what you're doing, and if you have absolutely no intention and attention to focus into a certain direction that is actually useful for you to create more lives, you can plan your lives in a positive, you're fucked, right?
Right. No longer will blissfully ignorant get out of jail free. That as part of the awakening, blissfully ignorant is a choice. And as long as it's defined as a choice in the Great Awakening, you are saying I'm awake or I'm not. Ignorance is saying, nah, I'm not awake right now. Self-mastery, self-healing, self-nurturing aren't relevant enough for me to look into it and do something with it. All of these other subjects are far more relevant to me.
Yeah. And that's fine. I mean, that's all part of the distraction. That's part of it's part of the journey of not really. I think in my revocation, I wrote something like magic is in the heart, in the gut, in the brain, and it comes through the journey of commitment, and it comes through the journey of discipline. You know, it gets created in all your systems through that journey of mastery.
And in that journey of mastery, you can learn about how those systems can generate new frequencies of sovereignty, new frequencies of pulling back the many layers of the dream weave, for you to learn about the many versions of yourself. And in fact, it's where the unlimited point of view becomes you. What could I do with an unlimited point of view?
Yeah. And where you solidify yourself on this graduation timeline, whilst you can still move back and forth and use all the other timelines and the parts and pieces of you to work as your cognitive precogs and postcogs.
And that journey to understanding precogs and postcogs, some will have a challenge with that. Before you walk into a room, you think about going into it. That's precognitive journey, even at the most basic understanding. And when you leave a room, you're still thinking about it. Postcognition. Those are all real things for us. Remember, we're all past, present, and future simultaneously existing. If you walk into the room and there was a good time in the room and you leave, you can still be a part of that good time as a feeling you take away with yourself.
I don't think everyone is familiar with that. You know, when you walk away from something, it's still going on in your head. We make ourselves wrong sometimes for that we can't disconnect. And we sometimes have to really choose to disconnect. But if you then just understand that it's really your post-cognition that is almost trying to read a pattern, maybe even. Right?
Or help you refine reading the pattern so an aha moment comes to you a few hours later. Oh, wow, that person wasn't hitting on me. They were trying to make a business. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where then that recognition, again, allows you to choose, to make choices, right? I don't know. I can perceive that happening a lot in my own life now, where that those postcogs come in and it's almost like you have this little conversation with them and it feels like you're talking to yourself. And then all of a sudden you choose different. So it's no longer that you're just reacting to something. You're actually starting to act as a sovereign, sacred, neutral being.
Yes.
Being thrown into it by the parasympathetic, right?
Yes. And something else the postcogs do, they help refine your first impression so that your first impression doesn't continuously define somebody negative about something. So postcognition changes our first perception of people, places, and things, as well as second, third, and fourth perception. So it allows a more refined, initial innate view of gut awareness of what that subject matter is.
Yes. In other words, it is saying don't go into conclusion right away. Stay out of conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't.
This is skewing your perception of perspectives.
If you allow it,
Mm-hmm.
don't go. Conclusion is one of the very, very important things now, because conclusion completely destroys possibilities. It takes you out of potentials. It just puts you onto this one focus, and it really limits your reality, the perception of your reality and what is actually possible.
Now, when the precogs and the postcogs are in this mastermind moment, lots of powerful spiritual things can go on if you are willing to go to the edge of your unknowingness and accept that the precogs and postcogs are inviting you to this mastermind table. And there's where superluminal thinking exists. Yes.
And, you know, if somebody is thinking of, so how do I perceive that communication? It very much depends on the way you work with the unseen realms. And again, that leads us back to what we were saying early on, you know, that visceral, that sensual, that connection with your body.
Yes. Because the precogs and the postcogs are in your future and past bodies.
Yes. And it's like, it's sometimes it's that feeling, it's like, oh, this just feels off.
Or feels right, or whatever the feeling is.
Exactly. That type of stuff. And then I think what comes in here again, in order to be able to really communicate on that level with all the realms that are available to you, one of the most important things is here that you're actually fully present in the body.
Which is something we talk about over and over and over again. And it's misperceived simply because people are allowing denial to be a river to Egypt in them about subject matters that are creating character flaws or some other situation they become zealotous about, which is now dominating their infrastructure of distraction.
Yeah. And it's where the nervous system just takes over.
Yep. Central nervous system and the parasympathetic take over and run you.
Takes over. And, you know, if you don't want to, look at the belief system as such, if you want to, it's the same thing. Nervous system and belief system, the programs, it's the same thing. With whatever you want to call it, it's something that is controlling you. Because
you're allowing it. That's the key.
Yes.
So Rosa has something also when listening to someone, if you feel your mind is being polarized by their view and expectation, it is better to ground in center so you could stay more neutral. It's hard to practice. Yes, she's absolutely right there. When something is luring you into storing charge and polarity for a future argument.
Yeah. Yeah. And a good tip for that is always to ask a question. You know what I mean?
Right. And polarization can be a healing process. It's not all negative. Sometimes these negative subjects have great learning lessons in them.
So I always say that, you know, allow yourself to be triggered. It's almost, you know,
right.
Yes, we're moving away from creating through contrast and polarization. I appreciate that. But especially now with the isolation where we're spending so much time with ourselves, which is important, it is actually quite a gift when somebody triggers you, right?
And when you can willingly go into a trigger, you can control how the trigger affects you and see its mechanics in your own system.
Yes. Pattern recognition again.
Right. It's when you're going downhill skiing, you can put your skis like this to snowplow, you have your things. And when you allow a trigger, you're going downhill with no poles and going as fast as you can, knowing full well you can cross your skis or use your poles to control it.
Yeah. And there is a reaction that is very common where you just walk away. You take yourself out of the situation.
Right. Trigger ends.
And at some stage, you know, there are situations where that is a good choice. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's a lack of commitment to yourself.
And that lack of commitment to yourself also is reflective of effort.
Yes.
Basic effort into your journey.
And trust.
Effort is still trust.
Yeah.
And then when you trust that your effort gives something to you, you can begin to gradiate what effort and how trust is giving you effort, and how effort equals success.
Well, effort is the means to really start trusting yourself. It's that repetition that leads to that illumination.
It's the fuel to trust. Yes.
Fuel to trust. Okay. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm saying. Fuel to trust.
And after a while, we don't need fuel to make trust. It's a knowingness.
But it's a bit of a journey, guys.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a journey. Okay, it's definitely a journey.
And say, okay, that's it. I trust myself and everything, because there are so many times where, it catches up with us, and we have to remind ourselves.
I want to touch on what Julie Smith said. Sometimes not having the last word is having the last word. Unfortunately, in human society, having the last word that isn't the last word, it's still engaging charge and polarity, because there's such a generational ego that comes with having the last word in a debate factor. Okay. And it's a generational and epigenetic trauma, actually, having to have the last word. There are certain family structures that if I don't have the last word, the argument goes on forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a perfect opportunity to learn to listen, to take yourself back and see where you're at from an ego perspective.
And then there are people that simply, they think they're letting it go, but they're just storing charge and polarity for the later argument. And knowing how you store charge and polarity is about learning to do these self-audits through spiritual hygiene.
Yes. And again, the body will come in and it will tell you, with intensities of any kind, that there's something is off, and you've gone too far into that polarization. You need to get back into balance. You need to let go of the baggage.
Okay. So I want to quote somebody, Rosa, here in the chat room. Hold on one second. I literally usually want to understand, because it also has to do with intention. The word understand is a tricky, slippery slope. Yeah. And understand can take you down some very negative processes that are not about intention. So you have to understand the word understand and the subtle processes that are within the programs that are forcing an understanding.
Well, this is again back to pattern recognition. I mean, I've been one of those big time. I want to understand everything, and it can really throw you off your path. It can really throw you into that polarization, and you can actually run almost like onto a timeline that takes you nowhere.
Mm-hmm. You and I've had many wordy type debates about the word understand, as well as the semantics of understanding and how it influences our spiritual process and beliefs. Well, understanding is not thinking, and understanding is not pattern recognition.
And it is a form of competition.
And conclusion.
And it's actually in the word. I think we talked about that before. It's that understanding. It's every time you understand something, how somebody else perceives something and works, you have to almost get into their psyche, which can be limiting for yourself. That's why sometimes it feels so heavy to try to understand somebody, because you're no longer equally walking hand in hand next to each other. You almost have to stand under that person in order to get it.
But just back to the hierarchical system of servitude.
System, exactly. That's better than competition. It's the hierarchical system. And you do that not from a place of, because you do it from a place of kindness almost, we try to understand others in order to fit in, make them fit in, or yourself. And that's obviously no longer appropriate in times like now.
Right. That's still compartmentalizing.
Yeah. And again, it throws you out of your authentic individuation.
Right. And it actually prevents authentic individuation.
Well, absolutely. So there's a different word for understanding, which other words do we have for understanding? It's just like listening, acknowledging, honoring, witnessing, that type of stuff. These are the words I rather use now, unless,
I'm going to look up the thesaurus.
Understanding, making sense, not even
appreciate, recognize, realize, acknowledge, know, accept.
Yeah, accept, allowance. That's the one I like. But appreciation is good. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Means nothing really.
And appreciation has no conclusion in it.
Exactly. It's an open ended. There's no control in any way.
Right.
Because you see, this is the other thing. As you understand somebody, you give them the feeling that it's okay the way they think, even though it's limiting in a way. It's actually not helping them as you, the empowerer, for them to think beyond their limitations. It's almost it's a form of control. It's like that cat biting its own tail. You're controlling each other with understanding.
It's also codependent.
Codependent, yes. Yes, codependency.
Get locked in a codependent debate and argument.
Because you don't trust somebody, or you feel, obviously, you don't trust yourself.
Therefore, you conform to the reality and allow servitude as a process instead of sovereignty.
And you add to the mediocrity of this reality. You're actually not out creating what's going on.
Marie Janowski, I no longer need to understand. I am learning to just accept. It is a long, long journey. Beautifully put, darling. Beautifully put.
Yeah. And as you start really, really emanating that teaching, that sentence, you can actually totally out-create it and listen to somebody. You don't have to understand it. You even find it interesting.
Yes. Instead of understanding, it's interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah. Yes. It's like, wow. But it takes a lot of, also, you got to get rid of your ego, because I think this is one of those things, somebody is saying something and you deeply do know it's crap. Yeah. And there's no judgment in that.
Crap is a judgment. And we have to understand not all judgment is bad.
Yes. So let's say it's knowingness, you trust and everything.
Right.
Is it required for you to pass on that knowingness? Or can
you
just
no. That's the tricky slope of entering the debate and argument again.
I know. It's tough. But there are times where you just have to know. I mean, look, you know that, because you have so many conversations where you just sit there and say nothing, whilst you could say 1,000 things.
Right. As an example, I get asked about other people's material all the time. And I generally don't say anything about it, not because I have anything bad or positive to say, is I don't want to engage into that process at all, because that's their material. Now, earlier today on Facebook, somebody was asking me about the Cobra material. And in my depth of knowingness, I know it's Galactic Babble bullshit stuff. You go back to his 2012 to 2013, 2014, 2015 stuff. He was so wrong about everything. It's ridiculous. And he led a lot of people down some really dark areas. And then he tried to sell you silver that was blessed by Pleiadians while he's manipulating the silver fucking market. Okay, and then in saying all this stuff that just led people down some dark spots. Now I responded to that out of my own knowingness, not as a conclusion and judgment and saying that. I just stated my perception and perspective that he's done these things out of my own pattern recognition.
And yes, and there are many, many times where you don't say something. It's the same situation, but you don't say something because, the body might not even open its mouth or start typing. And that, again, is the instrument of experience working with you and working with the sensory system,
Exactly. Discernment is not judgmental. Discernment engages your knowingness with a trust factor to it.
Yeah. And it's being in allowance. And at the same time, it's actually, it's acknowledging universal law in a way.
Yes.
That everything happens for a reason. You don't know what contracts these people have. They're just living out their contracts, right?
Right. Even in that Facebook statement, I said, if you enjoy listening to him, enjoy listening to him. That's your
Yeah.
discerning journey.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, I mean, I don't know how many bloody times in my life I had to do and to go through things in order to learn the hard way in the beginning, you know, because everything is a learning, everything is a teaching at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank Maddie Waller. Sometimes what Andrew does not say says more. Hold on a second. The chat was says more what he does if you're paying attention.
Absolutely. That's another
Yes.
pattern recognition. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I don't say has a big inflammation. It's, ha ha ha.
Yeah, you can actually feel it, right? There's bring, oh God, he's not saying anything. But you know what? That's the space. That's the space of allowance and neutrality that allows the other person, if they so choose, if they are at that level of awareness, to start making changes.
Exactly.
Because what that does is they don't have to resist you, they don't have to react to you, they just have to go straight in there and think, oh shit, I can feel something. Yes, he's right, he hasn't said a thing, I can feel it. Something, that inner knowingness is actually coming through because there is no control mechanism.
And because there's no control mechanism there, they can't force karma onto me by not saying anything.
Correct.
Okay. Which
Correct.
is what these long-term debates that people want to have when they're trying to force me to believe in what they believe in.
Yeah.
I'm not accepting your karmic debt. Fuck off. Go away. No. What part of no don't you understand?
So that's a form of boundaries, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
certification of the way you you know, create your sacred neutrality. So there's so many different ways of doing that, you know.
And the journey of doing is your journey.
Yeah.
Yours and yours alone. That is 100% your free will. You just have to learn how to engage what 100% free will really looks like and feels like. Most people are only exerting 10, 20, maybe 30% of their free will. They don't realize the potential in the moment of now. And then once you've done now what? What's your
Yeah.
strategy? What's your grander pattern recognition? You can't always live in the now. The now is past, present, and future.
Yeah.
So Eckhart Tolle, fuck you. Okay, power of now. Now what? Okay, now what, Eckhart? You gave nothing for the future.
No, come on, Eckhart. No. As he teaches us to be in the now, we can then actually start the journey to understand
He
the end.
fundamentally left out a significant portion because he stopped practicing now.
He
And
stopped.
I'm ragging on Eckhart because he did that. He did that at a time where now what should have been his next set of books instead of Power of Now Everywhere, and it's only about now for 30 years.
Right. Right. So there's no planning for the future.
There's no now what.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it's the grandmaster of the obvious situation because my edge of knowing has already been okay. Now what? Strategy, plan, past, present, and future, self, precognitive, post-cognitive workforce. Why didn't he see any of that?
Well, because he didn't, but I appreciate his idea of pointing out the
But he
importance.
stole that from all the other major religions that gave now, but didn't give now what. He just wrote it in a book at a time that had a really great set of editors and agencies to put it out there. And that's his spiritual contract. And am I ragging on him? Yes, because he didn't go now what. And the next set of books didn't have now what to them.
Right. I don't know. I haven't read any of his material, but I mean that obviously takes us back to our topic today, ancient future now, you know, and the importance of being present and understanding that being present means the acknowledgement, the appreciation of the past and the future.
Right. And the ancient future now, what? Now that you have ancient future now, what are you going to do with it?
Yes, that's a good question.
Okay. That's where the inner spiritual genius and strategizer has to create your fourth dimensional spiritual business plan about how you go forward with now what. So you're not lost into the infrastructure of distraction and debate with people who only want to engage you in karmic contracts of dissolvement of yourself.
So let's give a couple of tips. So first is acknowledgement. You got to acknowledge that. You got to look for pattern recognition in your past, this lifetime.
Adult, serious acknowledgement, not faux acknowledgement, and I don't really practice. Self-mastery has to be engaged with high levels of commitment, courage, and self-love, which are not mystical.
Absolutely not mystical. Absolutely. Now, acknowledgement comes through what? Through writing it down.
Re-engaging it through reading, writing again, out loud systems, so that it is not just a memorization factor, but into your short-term knowingness, so that pattern recognition is simple with that material.
Absolutely. It's almost like, I mean, you have all these tools now. You have revocations, invocations, prayers, word salads, whatever you want to use, literally writing it down. And I'm just saying that really because I have just done that. I've just made myself a little prayer and to reinforce it. And it's quite interesting that how my body again works with me to make me read it continuously. And I'm like, I've read it twice now. What's going on? You read it again. And then you add a few more words. It's almost like, it's amazing. And you will know when you're done with that. And then you leave it for a little while and then it will come back. Or you might have to rewrite it, and you may want to share it or you're not, depending on, how it works for you. Very, very important that.
Right. That journey into repetition is knowing that illumination is a part of each repetition. When we get caught in repetition for repetition's sake, we lose self-illumination. The point of repeating it in whatever format, reading, writing, out loud, it's to repeat it in such a ways that the body's involved into many versions of that repetition. So once again, pattern recognition with what we're repeating is very easy for us.
Absolutely. And it's almost like what I'm perceiving with mine is like, because my sentences are quite long, I have to really take a big breath to get it out in one sentence. And I don't want to change the sentence. It's really working, taking the breath with you, you're taking the body with you in those exercises.
Yeah, you're like me doing a 7-minute sentence without a breath.
Yeah. And I sometimes, I say, okay, let's not do that. But, I do like it in a way. I'm a bit of a, I like it. But having said that, now the next step, and I think I really want to bring that up too, is as we talk about ancient future now and all of that, timelines and the shards, parts, avatars, and all the other stuff, you cannot leave out dream time. Dream understanding of the contribution of your dream time in all of that. Because as you, let's say, for instance, we're just saying, you're writing these things out, you're actually setting yourself up, you're preparing yourself to have a dream that really assists you in that journey of now what.
Yeah, but a dream may not actually be sleeping dream. You could have a dream come into in a visionary form when you're wide awake.
Absolutely, yes.
The dream weave is not limited to sleeping. And we're at a stage where the traumas and the infrastructure of distraction have created such a divisiveness about what dream space and dream weave can potentially be for you. And oftentimes these visions that are coming from the dreaming world are blocked or misinterpreted, or they're like a video that's constantly buffering and loading and it's almost like you can't watch it. And a lot of people get stuck because they have major issues with their gut genome. Therefore, they're not really their dreaming body and their gut brain really isn't connected to their dreaming world. And the brain and the heart are overworking and over pattern recognizing and making mistakes. So gut health, spiritual health, hygiene are vital so that those visions and daydreams and nighttime dreams can have a lasting effect on the material you're creating within yourself, and the pattern recognitions and the ahas, until such a time the clear visionary dream space comes through and you awake inside the dream going, hey, I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming in this dream. And that pattern recognition of awakening to the dream is the higher form of evolution we're trying to get into. So we can naturally enter that state, I'm awakened in the dream, whether I'm awake or asleep.
Absolutely. So when we say dreaming, obviously, you know, there is that part of the journeying, the meditations, the daydreaming, and also the synchronicities that are starting to increase as you practice that type of spirituality. Because for me, that's what I call spirituality, practicing that self-development,
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely. That's the great definition right there that people need to take away from this show. Spirituality is practice.
I always, you know, it's like, for me, it was always self-development. So looking at that, you know, but that's really what it is. And this is where the magic is. And the
In the
more you do,
practice.
this is where the mystical experience actually happening, you know?
Right. It begins to subtly weave its way into your perception.
Embodied spirituality. And again, it's not going to weave itself into your perception if you are distracting, if you're curiosity learning, and if you're not allowing yourself to be in that place of stillness at times where these things actually can come in. Having said that, you might be watching a Netflix movie, which happens to me all the time. I watch something and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I just watched The Travelers. You know, it's a three series episodes. And there were so many things in there that really helped me on my journey because there was so much pattern recognition there.
I enjoyed that show a lot, where they would just come in and take over bodies, and they have relationships and missions to do, and then there's the negative guys that are coming backwards in time. Very, very intricate show. Yes.
And I like Philip is my character. I like him, especially now. I've just finished. So towards the end, he's the historian there, funny.
Yeah.
And at the end, where he's actually saying, I don't know when it was made, he's actually saying he can't focus on he can't tell the timeline anymore. And as he walks, having had all these uploads, you know, you can see the timelines are mixing up. He can see this happening, this potentially happening there, and this potential happening there, and everything. And he chooses not to use any drugs at the end, and really uses the focus, uses the stillness. He starts meditating to actually work. Travelers, yeah.
Yeah, the show is called Travelers, and it's on Netflix right now. It originally was on NBC for 2 seasons, or 1 season, and then Netflix took it over for the last 2 seasons. Yeah, and it was sad when it ended. They could have easily gone on 2 more seasons and finished off some of the greater concepts that were there. How they brought technology back from the future, and the technology in the past wasn't good enough to run future technology, and then they had to bypass and make future technology with existing shitty parts.
And in the end, they all went back again to a certain specific time and just started all over again, saying,
Right.
fuck this, we're not doing it anymore. I'm just going to be a nurse now in this hospital. I'm just going to experience some love here, you know.
Right.
And
I'm just going to integrate myself into the timeline because I'm not an actual physical body from a future. I'm a consciousness that took over a body that was about to die, and we rescued it from death because we have technology that can bring people much better technology that can stop death.
And really start enjoying what this planet has to offer. I always love when they come through and then they eat for the first time. It's like, oh, hot dog.
Right. Or they get into an old body instead of a young body.
I know. It is like, whoa. It's really fun to look at it, and all these little bits of soft disclosure, heart disclosure, you know, it's all cool. I know the other thing, there's so much out there about AIs at the moment, and the integration into human life and living.
Mhm.
humanoid living. It's fantastic. It's really good stuff out there. So all of that is not necessarily a distraction, so don't beat yourself up if you watch a bit of that too.
So the term is everything in moderation, including moderation. When we can take that on to actually mean something to our greater journey, we allow ourselves far more latitude and longitude and vertical and horizontal perceptions of the many things we can do in our unlimited journey.
And it's back to the trust journey.
Mm.
you know if you and it's not an addiction. There's a difference between feeling addicted, where you take yourself out, where you try to escape the reality, or you watch something like that actually contributes to your pattern recognition for your own life and others.
Wonderful. Well, Martina, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes straight. I think that's not our record, but I think if there's anyone that's going to transcribe it, they're going to have a brain meltdown somewhere.
Transcript anybody if anybody does it.
Yes. So we're going to take some calls now. All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who wants to have a talk with us.
Pano, getting a signal to unmute.
Pano.
Hi,
Hi, where are you calling from, Pano?
I'm calling from Albania, actually.
Albania. Welcome to the show. What do you think of our show today?
It resonated a lot with what I've been going through lately, actually, spiritually.
So what did you want to talk with us about today?
I actually am going through some, I'm so to speak, baiting propaganda into my soul shards. And it's very complicated because the moment that I try to, so to speak, distinguish them, they melt in with my current life. And I can't. It's almost impossible for me to distinguish them, and even with that, I try to remove them, so to speak, in the moment, but it's very difficult. Actually, I'm trying to find a catalyst. I'm actually using my inner life energy to try to take care of it, but and eventually I will. But I just want to find some type of shortcut that could help me a lot more. Actually,
There is no shortcut here.
really,
No.
not.
And who told you to use your inner energy on this?
My companion, actually, my spiritual companion.
A non-physical companion?
No, not. He's my best friend at that.
Okay. Unfortunately, he's wrong here.
Why?
Martina, you want to step in here and give him a little bit of a light pat on the back, or you've got to look in a different direction?
Well,
yeah.
The thing is, what you're doing by giving, who are you giving your energy to when you do that?
To whatever's popular in the people that are 18 to 25 years old. So what's up?
Within yourself, there must be programs that are, entangling you with that material. So when you say you're using your energy, you're actually entangling with the programs. You're giving your energy to the programs that allow that entanglement, instead of actually saying, let's get rid of those programs. What are the programs that are running you and your energy?
From the type of culture that involves gaming, a life which you don't move a lot physically, the stereotype of what a gamer is nowadays, mostly like that is 80% of it, and the rest of the energy is just like random stuff which I've picked up throughout this current lifetime, not from my past lifetimes.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, gaming is a huge one, right? And
Yeah.
as you're tapping into that collective consciousness, it's there is a need for really fortifying your reality and setting your boundaries by saying, I am Pano, I might be living here, but I know better than that. I am not going to entangle with that. What is it that I can do to let that go?
That works also, but uh, my karma keeps pulling me back, actually.
No, that's your delusion.
Is it?
It's your choice. It's your choice that keeps pulling you back.
And if I do resolve it in this lifetime, how many lifetimes will it follow me back
You're asking about lifetimes that are irrelevant to this one right now. It's this lifetime that's making the choice of entangling with it.
True. True.
So you got to change you now, not the past. The past isn't the problem. The problem is you now, making the incorrect choices of repetition without illumination.
Yeah.
It's like you can't be the bitch to your karma.
Right. You can't be the bitch to your karma.
It's I'm with you in that, but
But that's what you're choosing to do.
how. Okay, let's say that I don't choose to do that. Like,
Okay, then stop blaming the past and accept that the self has to change today and nothing about the past selves, only this being Pano living now. And the incorrect choices he made on the journey of blaming the past. You have to accept your own responsibility to your own awareness, which is the crux of your issue right now, accepting responsibility.
it is.
Okay? What are you responsible to in your awareness?
My spiritual self.
Okay, so if something is in your awareness that is creating a negative response to you, a negative energy, what is your responsibility to that negative energy in your awareness?
It's highly monetary, financial right now.
Martina, you want to step in on that one?
Well, this is an excuse as well, because money itself is not the enemy. Okay, money is not something that puts you into that addiction. It's really the choices that you make. You got to look at it. It's not that's money is the excuse here that you're using. What's the purpose of using money as an excuse here?
Am I really that delusional?
Unfortunately, in this micro subject, yes.
I
And I'm going to say this micro subject, yes. Because at any point in time, you could have put down the video games and got a dishwashing job, but you have something that will prevent you from even taking those.
Something keeps drawing me back, dude. I can't figure it out. What? Like,
it's the easy choice of blaming something else.
And also, it's the ease of it. It's just too easy for you to create money like that. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're actually not. It's a bit of a self-loving exercise here. You're overwriting, what you know is good for you and what you know is not good for you, by taking the easy way out. And the thing is, taking responsibility for the level of our awareness or this entire consciousness, game is not easy. We can't take the easy way out anymore. We have to be really committed.
Right. In this micro situation, your choices are the hard way, but it's not really the hard way. You've just empowered it to be the hard way because you took the shortcut so often.
that's true. I actually sense that with my intuition, which I trust most for myself, my body,
And once you get into the journey of self-mastery to your own awareness, it actually becomes far more easy to make these decisions of change.
I know.
So how can your ancient future self assist you with that?
What it tells me is that you have to stay in the middle. Like it does a hand movement up and down, and all I read is in the middle. That's all it says.
Is in the middle conforming though?
It's conformist, but not conforming.
What's the difference between conformist and conforming? They're both the same thing.
Yes, but conformist has the ideological structure of being in the situation in your life where you always are chasing not too much, not too less, but conforming is
that's
more.
That's the definition of mediocrity.
Yes, exactly.
And mediocrity is not a position of growth.
True.
Yeah, it doesn't create, but also there's an element of who are you not trying to upset?
Good one, Martina.
Who or what are you not willing to upset for the greater good of your own evolution?
my, what's the word? Not my ego specifically. Although in the past it used to be blatantly my ego. Now I would say my primal self.
And who else
That's all, to be honest.
outside of yourself here?
You've been conforming for so long, you can't even see your other options that are a part of the choices here.
Yes, that's true.
You've reached a comfort level where it's easy for you to exist at that stage and not grow.
Yeah, this is the other thing. I've been trying to grow lately. I've been trying to do some contemplation, and
Trying is not doing and writing about it and integrating. Trying is faux attempts.
okay. At the very essence, have been present.
Sure, that's the basic process in the beginning, but it's just like, okay, now what? You're forever stuck in the now what, and
Yep.
don't have any short-term or long-term plans that give you short-term victorious goals to get out of the rut you've created.
Yeah, it's. I feel like I keep bashing my head against the same thing every moment of my day.
Then stop doing it.
Yeah, but
Why do you have to bash your head to the same subject matter over and over again? It's clearly not working, right?
It's like it's not like it's not working, but
It's not working to your judgment of success.
my judgment of 100% success.
But you can't start with 100% success. You're still in a conforming state.
Yeah, that's a paradox.
But that paradox is easily unraveled.
It's like
How?
question number one: are you actually willing to be that different that you could be?
Yes, of course, 100%.
You would
Stop,
really,
stop saying 100%.
if
Go ahead,
Of
Martina.
course, truly.
if you're willing to be different, yeah, then how many people would you have to leave behind?
I love that, Martina. Great one.
5.
Are you?
My 5 closest relatives, yes.
So
So
I would look at that from a very sacred neutral perspective. Just look at where you're allowing yourself to be held back by the non-choices that you're choosing.
it's gonna be a rough one for me,
Yes.
of course, but
Yeah.
for everyone else around me and my friends.
Exactly. Are you willing to be that?
Yeah, of
Catalyst
course.
change, Pano, for yourself and for others. The conformist does not create change. It drags others people along on the old path. Are you a leader? I think
Of course. Yes, I am.
Then lead yourself out of the conforming state and be a lone wolf willing to run ahead of the pack of conformists.
Look,
you can still allow the rebel to ride the lone wolf sometimes.
And you can still enjoy their company.
Oh,
You
totally.
just can't obsess with their conformity.
no, not at all. What I'm trying to do is align both of them together.
In the beginning, you can't.
Why not?
Because you can't do everything at once because you're conforming still. You have to actually get the short-term successes of separation and go through the hard part so that you understand what the hard part is.
I'm willing to do that. I have no problem with going
But
to
you
the hard
do,
part.
innately you do, or you would have already been there.
I have been there.
As long as you keep committing to others, you cannot commit to yourself. And let's use your 100% here. It's impossible. It starts with a commitment to the self. This is then what opens you up to be available as a contribution to others.
And this is the stubbornness in your own self about change, which is involving stubborn ego and vanity.
Vanity is a big part, of course, but it's not even the problem here, is it?
There's also misinterpretation of kindness, darling. I know. Misinterpretation.
But
This
how
is not
can
kindness. It's not kindness to yourself. I would suggest you just re-listen. There were a couple of very good things we've said here. Re-listen to it a couple of times.
I
And
definitely
it will
will.
get really clear to you.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot for calling in. We got to move on to the next
Thank you,
caller.
Andrew.
You're
Bye.
welcome. You're a good teacher to a lot of people.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who's next.
Okay, Matthew Aller, you're up next with Andrew and Martina.
Matt,
Yay.
how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Hey, I like your thing. Let's all be weirdos.
It came from a conversation on the Earth Nouveau show that we had. Hey, Martina.
Hi, darling.
How we doing?
So, what did you think of today's show?
Yeah, it was good, man. I like it when you touch on these subjects. Very, very good. It inspires me a lot.
So, what did you want to talk to us about?
Okay, so I know you've covered a lot of this on the on some previous shows, but I wanted to talk about precogs and postcogs, and pertaining to a conversation we've had before. The difference. I'd like to discuss the difference between effort versus control, with regards to the pre and post cognitive process for an aware, multidimensional, individualized being. So, in other words, when one consciously engages the post and precogs for one's own process, what are the mechanics? Because sometimes we don't get what we want, even when we think we know how to create. Because it's not in our greater good.
Usually, when you don't get what you want, there's an expectation you're enforcing onto the precogs and the postcogs. And instantly, the precogs and the postcogs are going to reject your expectation of control and are going to give you the potential timelines that are right and true for the authentic you, who's not in interpretation of expectation, which is creating the law of limitation. So the need to control creates an expectation that limits the precogs and the postcogs. When you're invited to the mastermind table of precogs and postcogs, you can't have an agenda going in. Any agenda.
And that's the control.
Well, understanding why you have to have an agenda. Go ahead, Martina.
It's almost like, I look at the pre and postcogs as teachers. They are my facilitators. They are parts of me that know stuff, and there is a teaching in that too. The teaching is that for us to look at control is always a limitation. There's actually, when you look at control, it's a lie that we've bought in this reality. There's no such thing. You can't control anything, really, because everything that you control will control you back.
Absolutely.
With the outcome, Andrew just said, it's the expectation game. And it's and control is very intriguing because it's got so many different masks. And you would never consider certain control mechanisms, or I never thought that is control. But it's the opposite of allowance. It's the opposite of not expecting, going to that place of the edge of unknowingness.
Right. And the subtleties of it can be implemented in our effort process. So within our effort process, we can be exercising a form of control.
Well, unfortunately, the effort process still can have shame, blame, and guilt, as well as vanity and stubbornness behind it.
Yeah.
There are many people that believe they're doing A+ work. In all reality, they're doing D- or F work. And that's a vanity process that's going to limit their capacity for the effort. And then there are people that believe they've let go of control. Maybe they've done an ayahuasca journey or something. But as long as you have 1/1000th of a microgram of control, you're still in control. And you're not on the edge of the unknowingness. You're far from the edge of the unknowingness. And that's where we can create a self-delusion.
And the other side of effort can actually be very joyful. What if we can actually get to that stage where we are looking at effort as a joyful, Andrew, enthusiastic, joyful enthusiasm, where we're working together with our bodies. And the main thing is, very often when we go into control, we are no longer in effort. We're actually getting outside of our bodies. We're going into the mind space.
Yeah. And true effort is effortless.
Exactly. And it's the uncomfortability of situations that drive us into that control. Because I've noticed that with the way my post and precognitive workforce work, they're always moving me towards the path of least resistance, even if it is uncomfortable.
And why do you think that?
Because there's many situations in my life that arise where I can see that there are great lessons to be learned, even if in the moment, from moment to moment to moment, it may become uncomfortable. But it ultimately leads me to the path of least resistance.
But that path of least resistance has the most resistance to it.
Explain that.
Because it's the path of least resistance, and it's something the body, mind, and spirit as a complex being may not want to go down, because it's at the edge of the unknowingness where I still have control and vanity factors. Therefore, I must resist it even more, even though it's the path of least resistance.
Uh-huh.
Well, and resistance is control again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we are using all this resistance and the effort and all these forms of control to actually make us feel better about being controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the people who are so deep into subtle control, when they achieve very subtle control, they have dopamine releases. And those are the ones that'll have a very hard time with the long-term spirituality processes and goals of self-mastery.
Mm. Mm.
You can achieve anything without control. What's it going to take?
Absolutely. What's it going to take?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what your precogs and postcogs are trying to teach you, to get you out of resistance, to get you out of that form of resistance. So who and what are you trying to control in your life? That's a question to keep asking until.
And you can begin to neutralize and neuter control in its many waveforms by learning to emanate equal co-creation, non-competition, non-hierarchical order, non-duality, non-separation, I am dreaming, now being. Mm-hmm. And making that not just a mantra, but a method of emanating that energy into your auric field, so that it begins to neutralize and neuter those energies, those subtle energies of control. Yeah. Learning the emanation versus emulation process is so vital, because if you're emulating something, you're not really doing it. When you're emanating, you're really doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other journey is action versus reaction. Okay? Because as soon as you go into reaction, it's another way of actually being controlled. This is how other people are controlling you, by getting into a reaction. Mm-hmm. And we can no longer we can choose obviously to do that, but the choice is to no longer allow others to control us to that extent, so that we are going continuously into reaction or resistance.
Exactly.
You know what it's like, tears, humor, joy. There's so many things you can diffuse that type of control, or be blunt, be very blunt in a very kind manner.
Mm-hmm. You see, I find these subtle moments, because for me, I marvel at the way the post and precognitive workforce work, because it always feels as though there's a level of resistance, and I feel I'm on my journey, well and good, but there's always, or sometimes, there's a level of resistance to that which presents itself, and it feels like it's that element of control that just stops the flow.
So the pre and post cogs are you. They are matched together, right?
Of course.
So where are you resisting yourself? What are you resisting within yourself?
The uncomfortable situations that arise through choices that I've made in the past.
Right.
Which means you have to go back to the journey of forgiveness.
Just exactly.
Why are you resisting forgiveness?
Because there's being shame. A perfectionist.
Because there's shame, blame, and guilt behind it. The perfectionist is just the reason you don't want to go back. Because it's perfect in your mind. It's perfectly dealt. Because in your mind, it's perfectly dealt with already. But the perfectionists are going, "Oh no, it's not. It's not perfectly dealt with."
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's also, you can go back to what we're talking about today. Is you are your ancient future self today. Mm-hmm. So how can you use that, think of it as a treatment at some stage in your life, many times in your life, other lifetimes, dimensions, galaxies, you know, you've made treatments, you've given yourself treatments to be here now for this ascension, for this amazing time to be the contributor that you actually are. What is there for you to beat yourself up about, man?
Yeah, not a lot.
Here, yeah, if you wouldn't have looked at lots of that stuff, and the rest is just joyful effort.
It is, and I enjoy that a lot. I'm just trying to get in my mind. I'm trying to understand the etiquette on how to, or overstand. I like to use that. The Rastas like to use the word overstand. I stand over instead of under. I'm just trying to understand the etiquette in which one addresses the post and precognitive workforce.
There is no etiquette, and just using the term etiquette is you enforcing a set of rules that you have to understand them through.
Gotcha. And that makes so much sense.
You're creating separation with that too. What if there is no separation between you and them?
So it's an effortless flow.
Correct, but you're creating blockages through the need to understand, the need to have an etiquette. They don't need that. They're you already. They know you. The etiquette is you trust the universe.
Do you understand, Andrew? The greater question here is I'm trying to figure out for myself and others how we ask for what it is that we want.
Don't ask for others first thing. Ask for yourself.
I mean for anybody else that's listening to the show. Andrew.
No. It's fundamental for you on your journey. Stop asking for others.
Okay.
Ask for yourself. Yourself is already capable of asking for others by asking for yourself and what yourself needs, and therefore everyone else will resonate or not resonate to what it is that you're asking.
Perfect. Do you understand the question, Andrew?
Yes, I absolutely do, and I gave you the fundamental reason why you're having so much issues with it, because you're still asking for others. Ask for yourself, and when yourself gets the answers, let everyone else interpret and resonate with their own free will instead of giving them an understanding shortcut for them.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Well, that's what I call the regurgitating teacher.
Yeah.
You learn it and instant repeat it. No, process it for days, weeks, months, and years.
Yeah.
And being okay with not knowing, Josh Dippold just mentioned, which is okay, which is important too. Be okay with not knowing. I know it's a tough one for me too.
Well, that is the trust process, isn't it? But there's also, on an element of self-mastery, there is an element of learning, a process of learning, rather than, you know, that's why my initial question was the difference between effort versus control.
You see, learning is also I had an interesting lifelong relationship with learning, which again, very similar energy to what you're bringing forward here, is until I actually stopped using the word learning, because it continuously put me into that polarization that I don't know enough yet. And there's somebody out there that knows more than me. So what if that is not the case? So stop using maybe the word learning and just acknowledge that everything that is already within you, and there's not really anything to learn, but just to acknowledge, to recognize, to appreciate, to find interesting. You know what I mean? It puts you into a different energy.
It does.
All right, Maddie. Thanks a lot for calling in. All right, brother. Thanks.
Nice one, buddy. Take care. See you tomorrow, Martina.
Yep. Cheers, bye.
All right, Martina, we're at the end of the show. We packed full of stuff. People that are transcribing this, their heads are going to be blowing up and their crown chakras are going to be like volcanoes. So why don't you give a way for people to get a hold of you?
Synchronistic is my website, www.co.uk. And we, of course, have our Earth Nouveau shows tomorrow, every Wednesday, 5 o'clock, where we get together and we explore consciousness. So it would be nice to see you there.
And you all know who I am. I'm Andrew Bartzis. You can connect to me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and a variety of other places. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and go ahead and make a comment on the different pages that you are watching about this. We do look for interesting comments and people. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll catch you soon.
Bye.
Each different bubble of reality is true. A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma. Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail. Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality. Hello. Let's create. Let's co-create. And let's change this world with love. No matter if you're from Alpha Centauri or Earth, we all began with the same birthing process. We live in a limited point of view. Living the mystical life daily is about striving for the unlimited point of view. Each day, each human being gets an infinite amount of choices. Living the mystical life daily is about facing obstacles and challenges. The level of awareness that you are working at means you have a responsibility to be equal with it. How does one truly let go of expectation? You can make the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep sacred. The keys to success: choice, 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 and choice.